And there we go, we're recording. Right, let's make a start then. So hello everybody and welcome to the Welsh Azure user group for August 17th. Currently around 6:30 p.m. here in the UK. As always, these events are community events. There's our organising team behind the scenes. Lately it's been me and Matt kind of showing up the last few months, but the other guys and gals are doing bits and pieces behind the scenes. So if you've got any ideas or would like to take part in the sessions, please do reach out to any of us, and be more than happy to get your ideas and get you on the sessions. Right, so this month we have two fantastic speakers as usual. We've got Rolf, who's going to join us as the second speaker this evening to talk about Azure Chaos Studio, so from chaos to optimum. Using Azure Chaos Studio, so I'm really looking forward to that one because I've not had a chance to play with that myself. So that's going to be a cool session. But we have Dee joining us all the way from sunny Cardiff. You're in, isn't it, Dee? I think you are. You're not far away from us all.
I am.
Yeah, there we go. So nice to have some homegrown talent here in the session as well. So Dee's going to come and join us about, well, authentication and identity management, B2B or B2C. So how do we make the what are the differences, I guess, and how do we make the choice over which ones we use and when? So two fantastic speakers lined up. As usual, timing wise, Dee will be kicking off fairly soon. I'm not going to ramble on too much. I should probably adjust these timings now, shouldn't I, really? But Dee will be kicking off with that session fairly soon, and then followed by Rolf, probably about 45 minutes or so later on. As always, we've got the quiz, so stick around after Rolf's session. We will be diving into Quizzer, the fantastic quiz platform that Matt has written. So we'll be using that to win some Amazon vouchers. So yeah, at this moment in time, it's looking pretty good to whoever wants to win those Amazon vouchers. But yeah, we'll see if we get more people join as we go. So yeah, probably ending around about 8:30, 8:30, something like that. So that's where we're going to be going timing wise. Okay, some quick housekeeping rules. As always, everybody please be courteous to each other. It should go without saying, but I'm sure everybody can manage that. There's no such thing as a silly question. We're all here to learn. So if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. Like I say, please stay on mute unless the speaker invites you off mute to speak or ask a question. But like I say, use that chat window. It's open to be interactive and ask any questions as we go. And when the time is right, we'll interrupt speaker if we need to and ask the questions, or we can leave them to the end. Please do leave some feedback for us. We'll put a QR code up at the end of the sessions just to kind of give your feedback and any ideas or bits and pieces that you'd want to add and feedback to us as a organising team. And like we say, do stick around for that quiz after the second speaker using Quizzer. So any mobile device or web browser, make sure you've got one to hand, which I'm sure you will have. But most of all, be interactive and enjoy the sessions. Quick shout out to our sponsors. As I always say every month, Servant have been a staple for supporting this group as well as other groups across the UK over the last couple of years. So big shout out to Servant for their support. Equally, we got the backing of Admiral and NetApp as well. So, you know, three fantastic companies showing the support for the Welsh Azure user group. So yeah, please help us spread the word. If you're watching this, tweet out, take some pictures, you know, help us spread the message across the socials, and obviously, yeah, shout out to the speakers as well if you can, to give, you know, obviously for thanks, as well as giving those guys some exposure as to what they're up to as well. So there we go. I've rattled through that in record time. Let's just get on with the show, I think it's probably fair to say. So on that note, Dee, I will hand directly over to you if you're good to go, matey.
Yes, perfect. I'll share my screen. And thank you very much for the introduction.
No, thanks for coming on, Dee, as well. We were webinar whether or not, well, when we finally arrange a hybrid event, I'm sure we'll get you down the Cardiff office as well. So
absolutely. I don't, well, actually, you won't see it now that I'm sharing my screen, but I am wearing my Welsh Azure user group t-shirt. So I'm representing today.
I did see it. I did catch a glimpse.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining. As mentioned, today's session is going to be about Azure AD B2C and Azure AD B2B and making the right choice between the two. So the agenda for today is there's going to be a little bit about me because us presenters like to talk about ourselves before anything else. We're going to talk about Microsoft Entra and then a little bit of a deeper dive into B2B and B2C, and then I'm going to show you something shiny and new, which wasn't on the original invite. Before we get into it, I do have the chat window open, so if you have any questions on the way, just throw them in the chat or come off mute and interrupt me. I don't mind that at all, and I love the challenge. So, the bit about me. I am indeed from Cardiff, Met. I graduated here in 2015, not originally, as you could probably tell by the accent. I'm from Belfast and moved over in 2012. Haven't looked back since. In my professional career, I've had many blended roles over the software development arena. Kind of a person who sticks their finger in too many pies and then realize that they've got a lot of work on later on in life. And then 2020, actually the 9th of March 2020, and I'll talk about why that date is important. I joined Coachio as an identity consultant, an external identity consultant. So the 9th is whenever I joined, and 5 days later we had our first lockdown. So I have onboarded from zero knowledge in identity to where I am today, fully remote. And hopefully I can excite some people about identity on the way. So in my spare time, I'm part of the Azure Technical Contributor Program, pilot program, who goes in and looks at Microsoft Docs before they're published or goes in and fixes stuff. And part of the 425 community, which is a Microsoft-sponsored identity show hosted on Twitch, but also we have a Discord as well, which I'm quite active in. And I'll give you links at the end if anyone wants to join and ask any identity questions. For those not in today's session, you can feel free to reach me at my email or LinkedIn if you want. Always happy to have new questions and help people out. So what is Microsoft Entra? Well, it's consisted in 3 parts, and the first part is Azure Active Directory, and that's where we're going to be kind of focusing our scope today. The second part is permission management, and the third part is something new, and I can't quite tell you what that is because that's the secret topic at the end. So Azure Active Directory, you've got your full-fledged Azure Active Directory, and within that you've got a subsection of external identities, and that's split into 2 parts, Azure B2B and Azure B2C. So the main difference between the two is where the users live. If you're using Azure B2B, the external users authenticate to their home directory, but they have a representation in your directory. And what that really means is in your corporate directory, you'll have guest users and they'll be managed with your internal users. And that sounds quite scary to big organizations because they don't want to let people in there, always security conscious, but there is ways around it. You can create a separate AAD tenant and have people there. That's not a problem. Essentially, you would just have all guest users, whether that's internal or external. And then you have B2C, which is a completely separate directory. So all your users live in one place and it's no affiliation with your corporate identities. One of the biggest changes in that infrastructure is that AAD, you typically have a limit of about 300,000 users. Well, it's technically directory objects, but a user is a directory object. You can get that extended, but it's not built to scale. Whereas B2C is built to scale, and it's built for millions of users and millions of authentications per day, which is absolutely fantastic for end products and stuff like streaming services. So we'll have a look at B2B first. So what B2B collaboration allows you to do is easily invite external users to collaborate with your internal users while having that security of their access and lifecycle. So let's have a look at what it was like before B2B started. I'll pause here for a quick drink. So the collaboration challenge. you have a perimeter, and inside that perimeter, you have your AAD. And you might have some apps such as Salesforce for project management, or you might have Workday for HR. You'll have O365 apps, and you'll have your own personal developed apps. And outside of that perimeter, you have users. And these users might be internal and they might be external users that need to collaborate with your business. And your end goal is to protect it all. So let's have a look at an example. Yes, I know it's that lovely text that we like to read every day on our DevOps board. As a PM, I want to access your project management app. So we've got Lorna, who's a project manager for Contoso, and she needs access to the project management app at CodeShow because she's doing some project work for us. In CodeShow, we have a IT wizard called Jonathan, and he's responsible for that project management app. So how would Jonathan go about onboarding Lorna to access that resource? Well, back in the old days, you would create a local account for her. So you would have your local ID, and you would have Lorna at contoso.com. Now, if she wanted to access your application, she couldn't log in with her Contoso login, but Jonathan would create her a local account and give her a @Coachio email address. And we do see this still today with some companies. The other option would be to use ADFS. So you'd have your local account and you would have a partner AAD or AD, and Lorna Contoso would have federation between the two using ADFS, essentially syncing some accounts across. And when Lorna wants to access the application, which is protected by Coachio's AAD, she would use her normal email address because ADFS just took care of that. So why the change? Well, the problem is local accounts for external users is a pain to manage. You've got one IT guy who's very stressed, and whenever levers happen and he's not notified, that user might still have access to your resources because no one told you from Contoso that Lorna's left, so she can still access CodeShow. And then you have federation, which is very complicated to manage. You might have one server, you might have multiple servers. Some will be on-prem, some will be AAD, and someone goes insane, essentially. We've all seen the IT crowd and the guy who hides in the server room. That would be your federation guys, essentially. So along came B2B collaboration. So you've got your host AAD, which would be Coachio in this situation. And then you would have Contoso, which is a partner AAD, and that's where Lorna would live. Jonathan would send the B2B invite to Lorna, and to access then Coachio's applications, Lorna would use her local @contoso.com email address, and she could access all of those applications. So how do you build this B2B authentication? Well, you got multiple options. Natively, AAD's tenants are supported, Coachio.com, Fabrico, Fabricam. You can still use WS-Fed. We don't want to remove that kind of old infrastructure that was there between on-premise stuff, because not everyone's moved to the cloud, right? We've got SAML, which is still used by big players out there. And then you got Gmail and Facebook. For some weird reason, we've got some social providers, and that's the two they chose. And then there's a catch-all, just anyone with an email provider. And that works with a one-time passcode. So onboarding, how do you get those users from their AAD tenant to be an external user or a guest user in your AAD tenant? Well, there's obviously the way you can do normally is single invites. You go in and click a few buttons, type in a few things, and that becomes quite time consuming whenever you're talking about 1,000 accounts because you just onboard a new partner. So you got bulk upload to handle that kind of system. You can upload a spreadsheet and all those emails to collaborate go out automatically. Of course, you can create a graph API. We all love PowerShell and we all love automation. So why not invite your users through Graph API? But again, that still means that you have to do something as an IT infrastructure person. So you can give them user flows, right? Let them self-service sign up into your directory. And during that sign up, you'll do some identity proofing and check whether they're eligible. Or you can use access packages, which is similar to the user flows. They're still self-service, but you get that ability to approve their account coming on board. Someone can go in and say, yeah, they should be allowed in, or maybe they shouldn't. So what do you get with B2B? Well, the biggest one is entitled management. As I mentioned, users authenticate in their home directory, but have a representation in your directory. That means that this representation allows you to have the ability to assign access to your resources to that external user. And then on top of that, entitled management gives you the ability to manage those users via requesting access, which then would create a digital identity as they needed it. And then those digital identities, of course, can be removed once the user loses access, whether that's because they left their main tenant or just a period of time expired. So just to regurgitate that, it enables your organization to manage that access and the life cycle of that identity at scale by automating as much as possible. And that might be workflows for requesting access, the access that they're assigned, the reviews, and even whenever their access expires. But of course, this means that your IT still have to do something, right? They still have to approve access, and that's no fun. Well, that's good because you can delegate that access out to other people. That might be delegation within your organization to managers of certain departments, but it could also be to guest users. So guest users have that ability to invite people from their organization to manage and access certain parts of your directory. Of course, there's security rules so they don't cross boundaries and do stuff that they shouldn't be doing, but essentially you're removing that onus of an IT team to manage everything. Because Jonathan, the IT expert, he doesn't know who should have access to what resources, right? It's going to be the likes of Joe, whether people are allowed into his legal system, or Mark, who can allow people into the finance and manage that application. And another big thing is access packages. I was hoping I would have something, a nice little diagram for this, but I couldn't find one. So we're going to talk about it a bit instead. So access packages is kind of, as it's kind of titled, it's a package which gives users access to one or more resources, and the user who wants access has to request it initially, and that will go through an approval process. So that might be 1-stage or 2-stage approval. That could be their line manager, it could be someone in their organization, or it could be someone in your organization. And if no one replies, then there's always a fallback, because you need to approve them or deny them somehow, right? And once they have been approved, if they have been approved, they fall into a access package review cycle. And that means maybe every month or every 6 months or every 12 months, they have to attest that they still need access to your resources. So now security is looking a little bit nicer for your external users. They have approvals for coming into your directory. If they want certain applications, they have to request an access package. And once they are approved and have that access package, every month you might ask them, hey, do you still need access to my resources? Because what we're trying to do, and the end goal, is least privilege. Right? We don't want people hanging about in your system with access that they shouldn't have. Because Lorna might have started as a project manager, but now she works in finance. 2 different roles, 2 different needs, and people who have that relationship with your partners need to know who has access and who doesn't. Of course, if you don't see that user logging in for a long time, access packages and reviews allows you to remove that person without them needing to attest that they do or do not need access. Okay, if they're not logging into your tenant, they clearly don't need access. And of course, there's many things that you can leverage in your Azure AD for guest users, your B2B users, your partners, your collaborators, including PIM and PAM, privileged identity management and privileged access management. People ask for a role as they need it and when they need it, and for a specific time. A maximum of 8 hours, actually, because the working day. So once they say want to manage resources on your Azure AD tenant, they activate a role, and that can be automatically approved, or it can go to an approval step. They do the task that they need, and then after that 1 hour, 4 hours, 8 hours, their access is removed, and they can no longer manage those resources until the next time that they activate that role. And of course, the great thing is at the end of the week, you'll get a report, or your IT folk will get a report of who's activated their roles and what they've done, and that includes a justification. So you've got this kind of, we trust these partners to manage our AAD. We know they're external, but we're governing what they're doing, and we've got full visibility of what's happening. You wouldn't have that with a local account. It would be a lot more difficult to pull that information out. So what does it look like? It's not all death by PowerPoint. I can show you a few things. So I'll pull up Firefox, and we'll go to aka.ms/Kayam demo. It is B2C related, but it also has B2B built in there as well. So I'll zoom in a little bit and go to sign in. If you're doing this at home or in your own time, the first 2 are consumer, so that's B2C logins, but the partner ones is a B2B login. So if I click on to sign in and I go and enter my email address, okay, go next. I don't have an account, so I'll be prompted to create one. So I'll create one quickly. We'll sign up with email. Great, it's all filled in for me. That doesn't work, of course. Let's try my Outlook. Don't you love demos? I didn't want to actually create an account earlier because I would have. Yeah, okay, let's try Gmail. So I didn't want to create an account earlier because I can't delete the account afterwards. So I'll go to the Gmail one instead. So I'll sign in. I wouldn't bother emailing this Gmail because I don't monitor it, just for FYI. No. And now we're back to the sign up page with the email address filled in. And I've got to add a few more details. So 1, 2, 3, fixed rate. Supplier ID. Supplier name. Blah. And then I'm onboarded. So what that's done in the background is added me to the Woodgrove directory as a B2B guest user using my Gmail account. And then I can sign in and I can access all the cool stuff that Contoso will allow me to access as a partner. Now, the screen you see whenever I was signing up is very vanilla. That's what you get. All right, you only get a few input boxes, and you can only change the logo and you can only change the background. So if you want customizability already, B2B is probably not for you. So what are the limitations? Well, you're only able to use out of the box workflows. So that sign up page that you've seen, that's all you're going to get. It's not going to look any prettier than that. Some people will be able to sign in and add a few checkboxes. So there is limited customizability, but you can add 2 API connectors, one whenever federating. So whenever I federate with Google, and then next one whenever I was creating my user. So what if you want something more powerful? What if you want something that's not for collaborators? You want something for your consumers instead? Well, that's where Azure AD B2C comes in. Azure AD B2C is a customer identity and access solution. They used to call it CIAM. They no longer call it CIAM because Microsoft loved to change wording and make things confusing. So it's Azure AD B2C. It also falls into external identities. And as I mentioned at the start, it's scaled for billions of authentications per day and millions of users in your directory. But before all that, we have to take a little trip in time. It all started when we had a web application and a database for everything. That was user preferences, the user's details, their first name, last name, financial credit card information, what they bought, what they talked about, you know, if there was a log for contact us or whether they clicked the button or what went wrong. That was all logged in the same database. But also was their passwords and authentications. I remember during my days of working in other companies, seeing a database that said users. And I had a look in it, and there it was. Every single user's username and password, unencrypted, in plain text. And every application would have their own database, and they would have their own user accounts. So if you had 2 applications with the same company, you would have to use 2 different sets of credentials. And that was never good enough. So along came centralized identity. That was when a user went to your application, they'd be bounced to sign in with a different application. And that sign-in application would redirect back to your web app with a successful login, and the user then can use the resources on your web app. And this is what Ping Federate and Okta do and Identity Server 4 does. But in 2016, Microsoft launched their own platform called Azure AD B2C. They were a bit late to the game, but they're the biggest identity platform, in my opinion, the biggest identity platform in the world. Go to any corporate IT person and ask them what they're using to authenticate users. 90, well, maybe less than 90 now, but essentially almost all of them will be using Azure AD. So for Microsoft to come into the consumer world is a big thing, and we can expect some great things that I'm going to talk about. So what does it look like to your users? Well, the authentication experience is very seamless, really. Just like with B2B, you can sign in with social accounts like I did with Google. That redirects off to that third-party IDP or identity provider to authenticate, and then redirects you back. And depending on what the workflow is, you might have to do some extra steps, such as I did whenever I signed up. But you can also have local accounts. That means someone can just create an account. That can be email address or it can be phone number, and it can also just be a username. But during that experience, you have the ability to call back-end systems and verify and attest user information. So when a user signs in with B2C, you might call a REST provider and ask them what their loyalty number is for your grocery shopping or membership organizations, because members have certain privileges. Of course, if they don't have a loyalty number, then you can show that to the user and say, this isn't, you're providing us stuff data, we're not going to let you sign up, for example. Supports all the latest protocols, which is great. So your web application can contact B2C using OIDC, OpenID Connect. And in the background, if you have a provider that's using SAML for external federation, it'll do that conversion for you and allow you to sign in. So it's a great lot of weight that's lifted off the developer who has to implement all this stuff, because they only have to implement one thing, and that's the Azure AD endpoint. Needless to say, with OIDC, you can connect to loads of identity providers, and one of the latest ones is Apple. There was some authentication problems with that, but they've sorted that out, and out of the box, you can pretty much authenticate with any OIDC provider. Of course, it goes without saying, and I've said it already, Microsoft are one of the biggest platforms in identity, and with that, you get world-leading security. So when your consumers are using B2C, all their data, whether that's data being used in transit, whether it's at rest, it's all encrypted. You don't have to worry about that overhead. And that's the same with B2B, but we're looking at a different concept here. We're looking at consumers. Well, encryption's one thing, but identity protection is another thing that you get. Well, you get it in both the cases, Azure B2B and B2C. So you can use conditional access to check the user's location see their sign-in or session risk. They might sign in from London at 12:03 and then 12:04 sign in from Scotland. Impossible travel situation, so you might block them. And you can see their user risk. So that's using threat intelligence, or if their password's been leaked already and Azure picks it up. And all this is enforced by policies. Whether that's to allow access or give them access, but they have to reset their password because their password's been leaked, or they just need to do MFA because they're in a high-risk area of the world. Of course, you might just want to block them. Then you can monitor everything that your users do. Where in the world they're signing in, what browser they're using, how many times they signed in during the month. What phone factor did they use? Did they fail a journey for some reason? All these things are just brilliant and knowledgeable. You would normally get this, right? So if you're using B2B, you don't get to see if a user's failed an OTP, so a one-time passcode challenge, right? B2C, you can. The hardest thing is just staying on top of the changes. So in 2016, as I said, it launched. And changes have been rolling very quickly out. Start with age gating, branding, phone sign in, keep me signed in, conditional access, custom emails, and recently the Authenticator app as well for time-based one-time passcodes, the QR code stuff. So if it's so easy, why doesn't everyone just throw together B2C? If you came to me and said, I want my POC or proof of concept in B2C using my corporate branding, and I don't have any complexity in my users' journeys, I could set one up for you within 1 hour. It's that simple to do. However, the problem is not everyone has those simple requirements. And once you go from out-of-the-box user flows to custom policies, as they're coined in B2C, you can do a whole lot more. But whenever we're onboarding staff, if we're onboarding staff, which we currently are, heads up, I would say people wouldn't be productive and comfortable with B2C custom policies for about 4 to 5 months. Honestly, that is how challenging it is to write these policies, and they're all XML, and no one likes XML. So B2B allows you to have these user journeys, but only out of the box ones. B2C allows you to have out of the box ones, but also custom ones, and to have local accounts, and to federate against anyone that you want, really. So what does it look like? Well, I'm still signed in as a partner, so let's log out. And we'll sign up. And instead of using the B2B journey, we'll go to consumer. And already it looks a little bit different because you're not greeted by that initial Microsoft sign-in box. We can enter an email address and password for local accounts. We can say we forgot our password for local accounts, or we can sign up. And during the sign-up process, we can get a code. So So of course, one of the first things that you want to do is make sure that someone has access to the email they entered. So this is already a lot prettier and a lot more fluent for your users. Of course, you can put your terms and conditions in there. And they can read through it. I swear I just said 5 a second ago. And if I get the passcode, paste it in there, verify it. So now it's verified. I try to create, but I haven't agreed to the terms, so I'll do that quickly. Sign up. I will correct my mistake because there's a back-end challenge to make sure that I have an account number ending with 5. And then we're in. So now it has to ask me for my phone number. I'm not actually going to go through that because I've done that before. And this is going to be a public video, so that's a bad idea. And I don't want to change my number again. But essentially then you can ask them to set up MFA to authenticate in the future. So I'm just going to show you a few more examples. So let's have a look at Subway. And if I scroll down to Subway Partners, there's also a B2C experience. Albeit I don't think Subway have done a very good job because this image is broken and it's quite plain. But they've got their corporate sign-in, which will take us from that to Microsoft. And we've got, so just to show you how customizable it would be, we can go to another one. Okay. I should say at this point, these aren't our customers or our clients. These are just people I find on the web. So this is another one for Kids Loop. I can go to sign in. It's hard to tell because I'm sharing the screen, but there's a telling tale when you're using a B2C journey, and that's the format of the URL. It will either have the tenant ID as a GUID or the tenant name as in, say, kidsloop.onmicrosoft.com. And then the next section will have B2C underscore. And that's how you know you're using an Azure Microsoft sign-in. For curiosity, if it has one underscore, it's a built-in user journey. And if it has one A, it's a custom policy. Anyway, completely different look and feel to this one. You got a nice image to the side and you get logins and you can sign in with email or phone. So you can use the phone number instead to sign in. Kidsloop have their users in multiple places, so you might want to change the language to, might be Vietnamese. I don't understand any other language to English, so that's lost on me, but it's a pretty cool experience, really, when you think about the B2B experience, which is very vanilla. I'll show you a few more. So Greg's has B2C as well. Reject all cookies. So if I went to sign up with Greg's, again, the telling tale is the URL. B2C_1A, sign up or sign in. Right is completely different as well. They've got nice little buttons. So all of this experience can be customized, and Microsoft say down to the last pixel. There is some limitations, but you can even sign up in steps. So if I show you Nuffield Health, they have a unique way of signing up users. Accepting. So if I go to create an account, it'll ask me for my email address first. So I can just literally do anything. Send verification code. And then in the background, it sent me an email with an OTP that I can enter then. So I'll copy that. And then the next step of this journey will be to enter the details of me and some marketing consent, because marketing people love collecting that information. Hopefully you can see the difference between that and what the built-in B2B experience was. Now I said about the URL and how you can tell it's a B2C journey. Well, that's quite important, because if you have a website that has no way of signing up, so this is the Oscars, there's no sign up button, there's a login button, which takes me off to B2C experience. They haven't put a custom domain here, so it's currently using b2clogin.com. There's no sign up button here either. But if you know what you're doing, you could just change the URL. And then create an account for the Oscars. So if you want to nominate me, nominations to asd@boltio.dev. I'm not going to continue to sign up because that would be a violation of access, because they didn't expose that on their website. So I'll cancel here. But the journey is not only thing that you can customize. Now I showed you the Nuffield Health email that came through, which was very, very Microsoft. It was, no reply at Microsoft something. You can build your own OTP and send that as well. So this is one that is sent from the Oscars.org domain, and they have their own logos and own branded and text and stuff like that. So B2C not only allows you to change the look and feel of your journeys, but also the communication that is sent to your users. So let's go back and look at the pitfalls. As I said, they're very complicated to learn. If you're not doing this day in, day out, then I would say that there's no point in learning custom policies. Ask someone who knows how to do them. There's no integration with Microsoft 365 apps today. So that means that if your Salesforce is protected in your Azure Active Directory proper, B2C won't be able to communicate against that. There is some hybrid flows that we can put out there. They're not fully intuitive, quite hard to do. The one that usually gets people is data where the data resides. Obviously, can't say that word today. So some laws require you to store users' data in specific locations and not transferred out. Let's think about, Chinese data security laws, for example. If you're going for East Asia deployment, it's not just within China. Now, I did promise something new and shiny at the start of this. And what's the new kid on the block? Verified IDs. So the third part of the Microsoft Entra product family, which has recently went GA, is Verified ID. I'm hoping I shared this with audio because of a nice little video. So if this doesn't make sound, someone tell me.
Can't hear anything, Dee.
Okay, let me reshare. Do you know that annoying little
Yep.
Include your system audio? Okay.
Only a select few, like government.
Is that better?
Yeah, got it.
Got it. Cool. So this will give me time to have a little break in the drink.
Every day, we carry wallets full of cards. However, only a select few, like government IDs and credit cards, are widely accepted. Our society has established global norms for how we present and verify the credentials these physical cards represent. But there's no real equivalent for digital credentials. Why not? First, there's no standard mechanism for issuing digital cards. To issue universally acceptable digital cards or credentials, we need digital identifiers that individuals can own, independent of any entity, organization, or institution. Currently, we use email addresses and phone numbers as identifiers to access websites and apps. But our access to these identifiers and our personal information is at the mercy of
Apologies.
service providers who can revoke them at any time. Secondly, there are no universally accepted standards for expressing, exchanging, and verifying digital credentials across organizational boundaries. This is all about to change. A new form of digital identity, based on emerging standards such as verifiable credentials and decentralized identifiers, can enable such digital credentials to work everywhere, be more trustworthy, and respect privacy. Here's how it works. Meet Alice. Her new digital wallet empowers her to own and control credentials. Since it's not tied to any one organization, authoritative sources can confidently issue standards-based credentials to Alice. When Alice presents these credentials, websites and apps can check that they're valid, for example by confirming with a university that she's a student there, and then grant access accordingly. While this process may be easier, how do we know it's trustworthy? Decentralized identifiers leverage proven cryptographic systems. When Alice presents her credentials, her digital wallet generates a unique identifier and signs it using a private key, secured by a biometric proof or PIN that only she knows. The uniquely paired public key is published to a distributed ledger. Alice can present her digital student ID card to a bookstore, and before granting a discount, the bookstore can confirm that the university issued the card to Alice. This experience mimics what Alice does today. She can digitally present and authenticate a set of verifiable credentials just as she would present a physical card. And she can revoke them with a single click, just as she would return a card to her wallet. Best of all, these digital cards are private. This puts Alice in sole control of her digital identity. She makes the decisions for it. Verifiable credentials will make it easier to stay in control and help unlock a more trustworthy internet that respects privacy for all of us.
Okay. Now I could explain a little bit better than I can. What I learned today is if you go back to your presentation mode while the video is playing, it pauses the presentation and the video playing as well. So don't do that in the future. So, digital identities. Well, just like everything, it's built on open standards, built by the World Wide Web Consortium, and is known as verifiable credentials, also known as decentralized IDs and verified IDs. You know, let's mix some terminology because we always like to do that. And it's represented as JSON Web Tokens. So it's super easy to understand and pass around, and standards that have been there for ages. So essentially what happens, and what that video was trying to illustrate, is that when you pass a course at university, you will be able to have the ability to get a credential that is stored on your mobile phone. Microsoft have the Authenticator app, but other wallets are available. And when you go to your first employment or any employment afterwards, which needs to verify that you attended university, it can just scan or ask you to present that credential. So it makes onboarding a lot more fluent, as you can probably imagine. So how's it all tied together? So when a credential is issued, there's two places it goes. Well, the signature, the credential, is signed by the university, which has a public record on a distributed infrastructure, basically the blockchain. So what cryptocurrency is built on is the same technology that decentralized identity is using. So when that credential is presented to an employer and it has a signature, the employer will look up that signature against the decentralized infrastructure and make sure it hasn't been tampered with. It doesn't need to go to Contoso University to verify that information. And Contoso University doesn't know that that credential has been presented to an employer. Only the person with the credential has the power to present and revoke that credential. Of course, Contoso University can update it because credentials do need updating from time to time if someone changed their name, for example. So the roles. Well, you've got the user who requests a verifiable credential from an issuer, in this case, Woodgrove. And then you have the issuer who is Crossware, and they want to see that credential. So the issuer will request it, and Alice will be able to show that credential to Crossware using her Microsoft Authenticator app. I'll skip through very quickly because I realize they're running out of time very quickly as well. Essentially, Microsoft have put a lot of effort into building upon this open standard. Ultimately, it is all open source, so you can build your own Ion node to look up ledger information. You can build your own resolvers. You don't have to use the Microsoft app, but the Microsoft Authenticator app does bring the wallet very quickly. The APIs for issuing and revoking, they're all built for you, all abstracted away to make it easier for the issuer and the verifier. But it is all open source, so you can build it yourself. They look something like this. You can change a few things about the card titles, backgrounds, the information that you collect or issue. And in terms of the architecture, you've got the Ion node, which is essentially contacting the distributed ledger. You got Key Vault for issuing signed keys because they need to have a secret, obviously. The APIs will then look at trusted issuers for verification, got the wallet as well. And then at the end of it all is your front end or your application, which can do business logic with that verifiable credential. I'm not going to show you in person because we don't have time, but there is a website. If you wanted to visit it, it's called aka.ms/VC demo. And from there, then you can follow their kind of employment and onboarding process for one of their fake employers. So, B2B or B2C? Don't let the terminology mislead you. Focus on the functionality, what you want to do. If you need customizability, go to B2C, whether that's for collaborators or whether it's for external customers. B2C gives you that customizability. There's industry-leading security in both. They both use standard protocols, and B2C contains the most flexibility, of course, at the cost of the complexity. So, just to recap, we had a look at what B2B has to offer for partners, how B2C can support your customers, the future with verified IDs, and I probably should get John to bring me back on to talk about those in the future. And of course, I didn't really tell you what you can choose because, as everything in life, it depends. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have times for questions, but I hope that you go away learning something today.
That was fantastic, Dee. Yeah, there's no questions in the chat, but I suppose if there are any questions, yeah, feel free to drop them in the chat now.
Do you want to recap at the end of the next session? Because I can stick about afterwards for anyone who has questions, and then we can keep everything on schedule.
Yeah, that's awesome, Dee. Yeah, so drop them in if you've got anything that comes to mind. No, I appreciate that, Dee. Most appreciated. Yeah, so look, that was a great presentation and great demos as well. That's really kind of brought it home, those differences there. So really appreciate you joining us tonight, Dee, and taking us through that. So yeah, if everybody could give a virtual or come off mute and give a real round of applause, that would be fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that, Dee. Yeah, no doubt we'll see you in person when we get to a hybrid event down in Cardiff at some point soon as well. So thanks for coming along. Yeah, and stick around, take part in the quiz as well after the next session. So okay, well, without further ado, we shall move swiftly on and hand straight over to Rolf if you're there, Rolf. Do you want to do the spotlight, Rolf, or are you going to try a desktop share?
I'm going to try the desktop share. You should see me right now.
Yep, got you. Got your desktop.
You should see my presentation right now.
Right, so we got your desktop. I don't know if people can see that. You might have to maximize your screen, I think, and go full screen if you're watching it. Is that okay for everybody? Can everybody see that clearly enough?
Yeah, looks good to me.
Yeah. Over to you then, sir. Thank you, Rolf.
Go. So from Chaos to Optimum with Microsoft Azure Chaos Studio. My name is Rolf Schutten. Like Dee also said, before we talk into the topic today, we always like to talk about ourselves. I even try to talk about myself before even putting on the agenda. My name is Rolf Schutten, and I'm an Azure Cloud Advocate at Segeka, based in the Netherlands. And funny story is actually that I've been working in the IT industry for quite a while, but only in recent years as an architect working with cloud technology and services. I have a very strong background in project and service delivery management, working at managed service providers and service integrators for a variety of customer sizes. And I always had customer-facing roles where I learned that a lot of IT directors and managers suffered from solutions that didn't match their actual, business needs, which ultimately led to where I stand today, helping customers to find and implement solutions that meet the requirements and their needs. Today, I want to talk you through chaos engineering and specifically using Azure Chaos Studio, which is in preview right now. First, I will explain a little bit about what chaos engineering is, where it all started. And after the theory about chaos engineering, I explain how this works using Azure Chaos Studio. So we'll take a look at how you run chaos experiments using this new service. And if there's time left, there's an opportunity to ask some questions at the end. Fun stuff is we will actually going to try and break some stuff here today. So just going ahead on chaos engineering, chaos engineering does lead to more resilient solutions. And I will dwell into that just in a minute, but the real reason why we need things like resilient solutions is that organizations purchase service levels with a service level because workloads are business critical to a certain extent. And failure can lead to loss of profits or stopping of critical processes. An obvious example is a nursing home that cannot view patient
Rolf,
data.
sorry to chime in, Rolf. Your microphone is dipping in and out. I don't know if everybody else is getting that. I don't know if you want to move closer or something. It's just popping in and out.
Thank you for
only
mentioning,
slightly.
John.
Only slightly. Sorry, back to you.
No problem. Please interrupt when it happens again. So, like I said, organizations purchase services with a service level because for their business criticality. Well, the screen shows several availability levels translated into the amount of unplanned downtime per year. To meet the agreed ability levels, we must design resilience of solutions in such a way that we can meet them. And dwelling more on those service levels and availability levels in particular, the meaning of availability levels, we have to consider that availability levels of the underlying components can weaken the totality of a solution. So suppose you purchase a virtual machine in Azure with an availability level of 99%, then you can assume that there can be 3 days and 15 hours, just like it says on the screen, of downtime. And if you decide to do this twice to realize a high availability solution, so you have two components which host your workload, then we can speak of an availability level of 99.99% and therefore 25 minutes of, well, downtime, which will still meet the service levels you agreed with. However, there is a catch which has a very strong influence on your availability levels. For example, a load balancer, which is required to realize the high availability solution and the network traffic management for that solution. Because the load balancer has its own availability level. And in the case of Azure Load Balancer within the standard SKU, it has an availability level of 99.99, 4 nines. And as a result, we do not achieve that total availability SLA of 99.99, but we actually result in a 99.98. And that doesn't seem like very much of something that will have a high level impact, but we're talking about doubling the amount of possible downtime because it results in 1 hour and 45 minutes of downtime. So what is chaos engineering and why breaking things should be practiced? So relying on the availability level of infrastructure components, a system and or application must be designed as thin as possible to be just as resilient as the underlying infrastructure. And in order to not leave this to chance, chaos engineering was created. And me and John actually elaborated on this last week in a conversation with, and John mentioned Chaos Monkey. And Chaos Monkey is a solution which is being developed and founded by Netflix. Netflix was the first in 2011 to recognize that development models needed a change. Their intent was to move from a development model that assumed no breakdowns to that there could be no breakdowns to a model where breakdowns were considered to be inevitable, and therefore driving developers to consider built-in resilience. So to support this, Netflix developed Chaos Monkey that released in 2012, and is actually one of the solutions for chaos engineering that is actually being used quite extensively today. So in that same year, in 2012, the concept of chaos engineering was born and introduced by Martin Fowler. Martin Fowler, not a very known man within my type of field. I'm more into the infrastructure type of stuff, but he's a British software developer living in America who did quite some interesting things in the software development part of IT. Chaos engineering is basically breaking your systems on purpose, so weaknesses or faults can be found and fixed before they break when you least expect it. And this can be done by breaking your systems on the application level, causing host failures, simulating resource attacks like CPU memory, networking attacks, or even region attacks. So when you look at the process and the culture within chaos engineering, there is actually a general high overview process. Starting from the steady state, which is the normal behavior of your system, it is important to know the value range of a healthy state. So you need to know when is my application healthy. In the next phase, you are
sorry, Rolf, I'm just going to chime in again. It seems to be getting a little bit worse. Your microphone is kind of drifting in and out every now and again. I don't know if there's anything else you can do.
It should be better right now.
Go on, you carry on.
All right. Please keep interrupting me. So the hypotheses are what if scenarios like what if the load balancer breaks or what if the virtual machine stops. And building on those hypotheses, you design experiments about picking one of those what if scenarios, scope the experiment, identify metrics, and of course notify your organization before doing so. So it is important to design your experiment as close to production as possible, but you want to make sure that you have an emergency stop. So also, yeah, try to minimize the blast radius because you don't want to create a catastrophic incident where users can't use their application and therefore enable their business process. And after you are executing your chaos experiments, obviously you need to verify and learn the means of running the experiment and learn on topics like time to detect, time for notification and escalation, self-healing to kick in, recovery time, etc. And last but not least, you fix and improve your solution. That actually makes what you when you come from chaos to optimum. So you fix and improve your solution, prevent it will ever happen again in production. And on the bottom half of my screen, you see the canary deployment model, and this is a model that actually suits very well for chaos experiments. In which you make a new version available to a subset of users, minimizing the blast radius, as I mentioned earlier. Also about the culture, it is very important that you should never blame anyone during this process because chaos experiments don't cause the problems, but they reveal them. So, on the 2nd of November last year, in 2021, Microsoft announced Azure Chaos Studio, which is their service to improve application resilience and disruption. And Microsoft made a fully managed services, which doesn't require you to do any management or maintenance and is deeply integrated into Azure. So you can use Azure Resource Manager and leverage ARM templates, Azure Policy, role-based access, and etc. Azure Chaos Studio comes with an expanding fault library. Faults are either agent-based or service-based, depending on the target type. So for the agent-based, which I will actually demonstrate to you in a bit, you need to install an agent on your virtual machine. And specifically for AKS, Microsoft decided to integrate with Chaos Mesh, which is another solution to run chaos experiments. And just to give you a feeling about what type of faults are actually in Azure Chaos Studio, I will now go to the Microsoft Docs. And this is a list that is expanding because we are now in a preview mode, and Microsoft actually promised that they will keep expanding the fault library. So we have faults that execute time delay, CPU pressure, physical memory pressure. That's all like agent-based. And on the AKS side, we have the chaos mesh, pod faults, stress faults. So there's a lot to choose from. Also for Azure Cache for Redis, key vault deny access, and we can actually do network disconnects and do some things with network security groups. And this list will be expanding in the future. For the demonstration, I prepared a number of experiments, and today we're going to kill a process on a virtual machine setup, and we're going to cause a pod fault against a cluster. I'm not going to cover them all for the sake of time and for the sake of time for the preparing this session. So today I will just focus on those two. And for the fun bit, I think it's time to break some stuff. So what I've done here, I have actually two setups. One is a demo setup of two virtual machines behind a load balancer, which are Ubuntu virtual machines running a web page. So the web page is from Chaos to Optimum number 0, and for machine number 1, it says number 1. There's nothing else beneath the Chaos agent has been installed. You can find that one here just to show you. We have here the Chaos agent installed. And it's just running on an Apache 2 on Ubuntu. I've also deployed a very standard out-of-the-box AKS cluster. And it's running the well-known Azure voting app. And we're going to cause a pod fault. And as you can see, if it loads, it's only running 2 pods, one for the front end and one for the back end. So we're actually going to try and break the front end. This is the app. And I here have some chaos experiments, which are the same that I just showed in the presentation. And we're going to execute the pod 1 and killing the process. And before I show you what's inside of this experiment, I will just start it because it takes some time to start. And what it does is, obviously, we can choose here to add faults and add delays. So delay is to make a process or a chain of different faults within an experiment so they don't run parallel. And I actually added a fault here, which is killing the process on a specific target, which is my VM number 1. So when we are actually executing this, the intended result is that we can only go to the from chaos to optimum 0, so we won't see the number 1. And in the vault details, I gave the Apache 2 as a service that it will cause to fail. So it's running right now. And I actually have SSH connection to the machines. So let's see if it is running. And we see that on the VM 0, it's running fine. There's no problem at all.
Check Rolf, you've gone again. It's getting, it seems to be getting gradually worse. So I don't know. I want to keep an eye on it. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah.
So
Go on, you carry
is
on.
it breaking or is it?
Yeah, it's just you going every now and again. It's like you're drifting away. The microphone is going really quiet, but then you're coming back. So I'm not sure if it's something going on with the microphone or.
I should stop moving around in my home office, I guess.
Stay still. Yeah, cool.
So what we're seeing here is that on VM0 it's running fine, and on VM1 the Apache service is now in fault. So that's actually something we expected. So when I keep refreshing this page, it won't let me see the number one content. So Microsoft does not do anything for restoring scenarios. So when I cancel this this experiment, it does not do any rollback. It's important to understand that it does not do any rollback scenarios. So if I had a resilient solution, the Apache service would come back on this machine. And I can tell you already now, it doesn't. So for me to learn from Chaos to Optimum, it's not a problem for me that one of the virtual machines failed at this time, because I have another virtual machine that can perfectly deliver the solution to my users. But it is a problem to me that it is not capable of self-healing or restarting the Apache 2 service. So going back to the process on verify and learn and fix, I need to implement some solutions so that the Apache 2 service will actually restart itself when it stopped working as intended. So let's try and take a look at running it against the AKS cluster. It takes some time for them to start. So everything is still fine right here, right now. Need to wait to let the experiment kick in. So it's actually running right now. Let's reload. And it's broken. So when actually going to get my pod status, you see that it does try to restart it every now and then. So 11 seconds ago, it tried to restart it. But it's not capable to do anything for a high availability scenario, because I already showed you that I only have one front-end pod. So it's not capable of self-healing within this scenario. So it's teaching me that I need to do something about resilience within my pod failures. So that actually is something that the Chaos Studio can do for you. You can build a lot of experiments with all kind of scenarios on different targets to actually, in a safe and controlled environment, run faults against your pre-production or acceptance environment. I do want to show you that the front end actually works with it. I'm running very fast through my content here, actually. See if it stopped. Yeah, so it's cancelled. And
I think we've lost you again, Rolf. Oh, you back.
It did not actually restore itself, so it has no self-healing capability. So to restore it, I actually need to do it by hand. how it's working. So give my load balancer some time to actually see that it is running again using the health probe. Take some seconds to actually give it back a healthy status. There's actually things that you can dwell in using your insights for the health probe status by backend IP address or by backend pool. So obviously you will need to use your insights or monitoring solutions to do some further analysis of what really is the problem beneath. But me and John actually talked about this last week, and because you are executing such specific scenarios, you know where to look. So that shouldn't be a real problem in real life scenarios or in experiment phases that you are not able to find the real underlying cause. So here it is working again. I expect that when I cancel the pod fault, it will restore itself because it already tried to do so. Like here you see restart. He tried to restart himself. So it's like the main reason for running this kind of experiments, to check if it does run as expected. Again. There it is. And I actually ran real fast to my content. Sorry for breaking up between with my microphone, but usually I do share a bit about some different chaos engineering tools. There are many different chaos engineering tools available, both open source products as well as from reputable companies. And well, I won't go through them all one by one, but each have their own characteristics, and is advised to make a selection based on your requirements. So before you adopt a tool and start with building and running chaos experiments, do some homework and look into what you really want and need from the solution. Some are better to integrate within your CI/CD pipelines than others. Some have very nice front ends or web interfaces like Gremlin and Chaos Mesh than others, but I would also suggest QB Doom. It is the only reason and the only way to actually ask your boss to play Doom during your workday. So have a look at these tools if you're interested in chaos engineering. And actually, John, I came to the end of my presentation.
No, it was a really good demo, Rolf. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think it's certainly an interesting tool set, and it's going to be interesting to see how people kind of, if they use that Chaos Studio and Azure and how they use it, because there's certainly some good scenarios to be used by. So that was awesome. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Rolf. So, I mean, there's no questions, I don't think, in the chat, but usual thing. If there are any questions, I guess, Rolf, you're quite happy to be reached out to if there's any specific questions from anybody.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Superb. So yes, thank you, Rolf. If everybody would like to give the virtual round of applause or come off mute, really appreciate it. Great talk. Thanks, Rolf. Okay, so everybody stick around. Let's move into the quiz. We've got our quiz master, Matt Vatunka, at the helm.
Yep, let me just share up. F11, there we go. Should be that one. Everyone should be able to see that.
Yep, we got you.
There we go.
So yeah, everybody feel free, jump on, scan the QR code, and let's get quizzing.
Now I'm hoping to see some user interface changes to this soon, because I've had someone who knows what they're talking about with UI design come and have a look at it. So
Ooh,
it's not
We'd
going to
have
be a
to
massive change, I'll tell you that, but it does look a bit prettier.
so what are we doing tonight? The usual thing, first and second place for now.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, good option tonight.
We got Mr. McLaughlin hiding in this in the
Oh,
side.
wow. We funded all his Amazon purchases for about 6 months, I think.
He's staying quiet. No comment, indeed. So we would say you've got a really good chance of winning the quiz, but now Ross has joined.
Yeah.
Unless Matt, you've done your
It's a pretty
curveball
evil
quiz.
question, but I'm pleased to see that there was some things that came up in both Dee and Rolf's presentations that I've actually covered. So I'm hoping. Is that about it? I think we should start.
Everybody okay? Is everybody on that wants to get on? Drop a message in the chat. Always trouble with Ross about. Thanks one, Chris.
Right then, let's roll. How many active users are you allowed in the free tier of Azure B2C?
If I get this wrong, I should just quit.
We'll know. Don't worry. I'm tracking all the data. Correct answer is 50,000. You can have 50,000 users in B2C before you start paying for anything. It's amazing. Which of the following is not a supported resource type in Chaos Studio? Virtual machines, AKS, Key Vault, or Service Bus? And I will caveat that by saying yet, because I know that there is a plan to add lots more resource types in. How many Azure regions is the Chaos Studio preview available in? I don't think this was covered, so this is going to be random guessing. Correct answer is 10. Oh, lots of people.
Your camera's frozen up, Matt. I don't know.
Has it? Oh, it does that.
Mm.
Hang on a minute. Just kill OBS and bring it back up again. I'm going to start up that one anyway. So Azure B2C, in Azure B2C, which of the following is not available as a user flow identity provider? This is one just for D then, this is.
Oh, God. You could do all this with custom stuff.
Yeah, with custom.
Yeah.
What about the out-of-the-box one? Correct answer was eBay. Yes, with that's the trick part of that is you can actually do all of those.
I hate to say it, I got that wrong.
And I never. In August 1997, how much did Microsoft invest in a then struggling Apple? I've got a lot of in this month in history questions because I was running out of ideas. It was $150 million, including a whole load of patents that they then went on to use in the iPhone, which is very frustrating. In August 1995, which Microsoft product launched? Visio, Flight Simulator, Internet Explorer, or PowerPoint? Now, I'm debating this one, but I'm going to go on the source that I found, that it was Internet Explorer, because it launched with Windows 95.
What was it before then? I
I think
forgot.
there was one before then.
Netscape.
Yeah. In 1991, the first email was sent from which location? China, Russia, the Antarctic, or space? And that was in August 1991, that should have been. These are all on this day in August.
Oh,
From space.
I forgot to press a button.
Oh, no. You've probably broken the system now. B2C is a SIAM solution. What does SIAM stand for?
Last question, Matt. Were you there?
What today? I wish. There you go. Customer identity and access management. If you want to query an external system for user data during login, what B2C feature should you use? I don't know what went on there. I was jet lagged, I'm guessing. Not even sure what custom flow IE is either. API connectors.
I would also give custom flow.
Yeah, but my answer is final. So there we go.
I got that one right.
Yeah.
I wasn't contesting that.
Which of the following was not part of Netflix's Simian Army? Was it the Chaos Monkey, the Chaos Gorilla, the Conformity Monkey, or the Rage Orangutan? The right answer is the Rage Orangutan. All the others were actual proper services that were part of the Simian Army. So Chaos Monkey already got mentioned. Chaos Gorilla was a tool that shut down, effectively simulated the death of an entire data center in production. Madness. And the Conformity Monkey, I can't remember. It was a way of checking that things were the state they should have been. And our winner is Rolf. Well done.
Hey.
Ross got in there anyway. Second place, Ross.
Yeah, as expected.
Cool. Well, I got both your email addresses, so leave that with me, and Des is going to be well happy. So
You'll be delighted
yeah,
I'm back.
say that again.
You'll be delighted I'm back.
Yeah. It's like, oh, look out, Ross is back on the scene. Right, awesome, guys. Yeah, I'll get those vouchers. So £25 Amazon vouchers will be winging their way to you over the next few days. So yeah, appreciate that. Okay, so there we are. We're at the end of the event. So just some final words. Thank you to our two awesome speakers. So to Dee and Rolf, really appreciate you guys coming on and sharing those awesome presentations with us. It's it's great that we can kind of get into these spaces and learn from each other. So this is what it's all about. Really appreciate your time and coming on and teaching us all something new today. So, and obviously everybody that's joined us, thanks so much for giving it your time and saying hello. And obviously coming on and getting involved with a quiz. I always do this at the end of a show. I can never find my PowerPoint little clicker. So, right, yeah, there's a QR code there. If you don't mind scanning that QR code or browse that URL, that WOW feedback URL, drop us some feedback. Really is appreciated. Helps us kind of pick some of the content for the next month's events. I don't know what we're doing next month, Matt, yet, whether we're doing a hybrid or whether we're going to still be virtual. Watch your space, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. We've got to have a planning session at some point, haven't we?
We have. Well, I'm off now for the next few weeks, so I'm not going to be back till early September. So we'll get something sorted. Anyway, there's the date, 21st of September. Whether we're on Teams again or whether we're in a room, we'll work that out. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Go and have an evening, I guess, and go and see your families.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye bye.
Cheers all.
Bye-bye.